What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of Bogey Free. We are coming at you with some PGA action this week for the CJ Cup over in South Korea. And Evan is in Vegas celebrating his birthday. And we are actually lucky enough to have Jimmy again on back-to-back pods. So, Jimmy, what's going on, man? How we doing?
What's up, Matt? I'm doing good. Just I didn't get a chance to watch a ton of the golf last week because it was kind of in the middle of the night. But looked back over a lot of stuff, and I'm happy to say I had Patty Perez in my outrights, and I had him in a couple of lineups. So it was a pretty good week for me last week, and I'm hoping we can duplicate that this week.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can run it back and maybe even get some of your NFL luck rubbing off into some golf. So real quick, before we sort of hop into everything for this week's slate, I do want to just remind everybody you can head over to bogeyfreedfs.com and check out some of the content I'm putting out. I already put up my preview article. I'm going to do some pivots probably during the day tomorrow, just so you can, load in some low-owned GPP guys based on fan share tags once they sort of update and roll around. That being said, again, this week they're in South Korea, so it's a bit of an odd start time. I don't know. Last time I checked, it's locking at Wednesday, 7 p.m. now.
Yeah, I think it's like 6:45, so 7 p.m., something like that. Either way, just don't screw around and make sure you have your lineup set before you go to work tomorrow, or while you're at work is even better if you can get away with it and your boss isn't a hard ass. But yeah, make sure you get them in and don't wait till the normal time. Otherwise, you're gonna have your placeholder lineup for the whole week.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a lot of confusion last week about that because, even today, like this morning when I woke up, I checked to see when it was locking, and it still said like Wednesday at 6 a.m. And I was like, that right, but they keep saying this when they're in Asia. So I don't know what the hell's going on anymore, but it's definitely in the evening tomorrow. So set your lineups accordingly and make sure you check out all your content a little earlier this week. So real quick before we hop in, I know we don't have any sort of course history for this course, but based on what you've been looking at, anything jumping out at you for this week at Nine Bridges?
Well, the ninth bridge is metaphorical, and it is the bridge between you and golf. So there's that jumped out at me, and it really solidifies things. But no, Nine Bridges, it looks immaculate. There's been some really cool articles and a lot of cool research and stuff. One of the things that I did kind of note was the World Club Championship, which is like you have a club, a home club, and they're in this organization, and you're the best player in the club. They send you to the championship every year. That was held here in 2015, and a bunch of amateurs seem to play pretty well on this golf course. And it's a weird mixed format. They do a day of stroke play, they do a day of team play, and then they do a day of match play type of thing. So there's not we couldn't get a scoring thing, but there was some telecast that I watched from it. So I went back and watched like an hour-long setup of a 2-year-old amateur golf tournament for you guys. And it was windy then, and it appears that it's going to be windy here today. You saw a lot of good golf from those guys, which leads me to believe that while it is a pretty immaculate course, they do set it up to be playable. So I think that it's going to be a playable course, and I think it's going to be a scoreable course. It appears that it's going to be fairly soft. I have seen notes that the rough is going to be kind of higher than what I saw in the amateurs, which was virtually nothing. So that missing the fairways will probably be at a premium, and it doesn't appear that you can stray too far off of the fairways here. It is like a parkland style golf course, so there are trees out there. And there is some water and some really interesting design features. But I think the thing that stuck out most to me is there's a lot of natural undulation throughout the course, both in the greens, in the fairways, just in general. And there seems to be elevation change on almost every hole, whether it be up or down. The course is played at elevation. And with the wind this week, I think that maybe the most important thing is finding guys that know how to control their ball flight, just in general. It compared to last week where we saw Patty Perez just making bomb putt after bomb putt after bomb putt. I don't think we're going to see a ton of that this week. I think the greens are going to be a bit faster. They are bent grass throughout, which is, if you've listened to anybody else or done any research this week, that's not normal for this part of the world. So I don't expect them to play like normal bent grass greens here in America. But I do think that distance control and ball control are going to be at a premium this week with the wind and the elevation. So, if guys that can find a way to control that and really flight their ball appropriately are going to be the ones that rise to the top this week. And I think it's going to bring, as we get into this, I think it'll bring some really interesting names into the fold that will probably be very contrarian. That said, who knows? It's a 78-man field, so there's going to be some ownership just higher than normal.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing that you mentioned about the sort of like all these undulations, like these fairways are just sloping all over the place, and it'll definitely be interesting to see how they navigate this. Just that, I don't know. I'm assuming some of like the KPGA guys have played this course before, but a lot of these guys probably haven't seen this course before this week, so that'll definitely be interesting. There's like a wild amount of bunkers on this course, like absolutely insane. I was laughing when you said you were looking at the telecast of the club thing, because I thought I was bad, like going on 18 birdies and plugging it in and looking through some of the GPS stuff and just trying to like play around with it a little bit. But that's next level stuff, man. I'm impressed.
Yeah, actually, when you like look at the course, it sort of reminds me of Augusta in the sense that it is immaculate throughout. Just there's not like a speck of or a blade of grass out of place. Just everything seems to be. I mean, if you know anything about the course, it's built by I think the heir to the Samsung empire, who I believe is now in prison for some shady stuff. But either way, it's no expense was spared in building the 9th bridge between Gulf and you this week. So, I think they're going to have pristine conditions, and the course is going to be there for the taking. I don't think they're going to have lift clean in place just based on the weather forecast and how much wind we're expecting. While the course may play a little bit softer than bent grass courses here in America, I don't think that they're going to have the benefit of lift clean in place like they did in Malaysia last week. And if you go back to what I said about guys spraying the ball off the tee, missing the fairways wildly here, I think will be fairly penal. So it kind of brings in some accuracy, guys. And the length of the course, it's not long. And with the elevation change and playing at elevation, I think it'll play even shorter. I think you can probably pencil this in for like a 6,950 yard course, which basically means that everybody in the field is in play for a great performance this week.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So why don't we hop into these top 4? We got a couple of interesting guys up here. I don't know. We got Justin Thomas, Justin Thomas, Paul Casey, Jason Day, and Tony Finau. So, I mean, you got the 2 guys in the middle who are sort of like completely allergic to winning, right? It seems recently, and then you got Finau and Thomas. So, I mean, if there were, all things being equal, what are your thoughts here? Like, regardless of ownership, where are you leaning out of if you're going to pay up for a guy?
It's Thomas or I'm not paying up for Paul Casey. At 11-6, he needs to win, and Paul Casey just doesn't win. I mean, like you said, he's allergic to winning, and it's true.
Hey, he won like the KLM in 2014. All right, so let's not be too hard on him.
Whatever. I won the boxcar derby when I was 14 years old too, and that doesn't count for shit. So, I get it, and I like Paul Casey. I think Paul Casey's a great guy. He's got a smoking hot wife, and he's a great golfer. But at 11-6, he's got to win, and I just don't see Paul Casey winning. That said, he is the best ball striker of that bunch in terms of tee to green, and he's not going to put himself in too much trouble. But again, I just don't see myself paying up for Paul Casey. I think a lot of people are going to be on him for the savings. Same thing with Day and Finau, which makes me just want to pay up for Thomas, who started out really rough last week and then found a way to close the gap and kind of get back to old Justin Thomas on Saturday and Sunday. And looking at initial ownership projections, people seem to be a bit down on him, which makes me just want to take all the more Thomas.
Yeah, I think this is a big time sort of like pay up to be contrarian spot. I mean, I'll never stray away too far from Justin Thomas or Tony Finau. I don't think Day really has the best. I don't know. I don't see it for some reason. I think that he played all right down the stretch, I guess, in the playoffs. Yeah. You do have to give him that, but I mean, I don't see him winning. Like you mentioned with Casey, like I don't see him winning this week. And he's just been, I mean, even at the Tour Championship, he was losing accuracy off the tee. He really wasn't striking it terribly well. He putted well, I guess, to save it a little bit, but I'm definitely not sold on him this week. So I'm going to be staying pretty far away from him, and just sort of gravitate towards whoever I think is going to be lower owned, whether that's Thomas or Finau. I mean, right now they basically have identical tags on FanShare, but again, it's Tuesday night, so some more content will come out tomorrow from people and we'll see. But I'm just sort of going game theory this week and avoiding whoever's going to be, the highest out of those two.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to make a case to quote unquote fade any of the guys, at least a full fade. But Casey, if I had to rank them 1 through 4, it's JT number 1, Finau 2, Day 3, Casey 4 is the way I see it playing out. And I'm concerned about Day's driving accuracy on this course. Now, again, it's not a long course, and I don't necessarily think that they're going to have to pull driver a ton for guys like Day. He is great around the greens, and if it's really windy, I could see folks missing greens more so than hitting them. But I don't know. Day could come out here and run away with this event, but I don't quite see it right now with Day. And again, if they are hitting driver and he blasts 140 yards, left or right, which he kind of tends to do a couple of times around, I think that could just spell trouble for him in trying to keep up with the pack. And I don't know, actually, here's a good question. Where do you see the winning score this week on this course?
That is a really good question. I mean, I would imagine, depending on how the wind shakes out, I would imagine that it's going to end up being reasonably low. Maybe not as low as they got last week. I would say maybe like 16 to 19-ish. But again, with no real data to go off of, I can't really say that with too much confidence. But just how I'm looking at how the course sets up, there's really, really reachable par fives. These guys, if they can get rolling with some of these shorter par fives and just be, neutral on the par threes, I think that there's a chance for somebody to go reasonably low. I mean, what are you thinking for that?
Yeah, it's tough. I keep going between 12 and 14 and 16 and 19, kind of where you're at. And I the more I think about it, the more I lean to a 12 to 14, just because of the wind and the lack of course knowledge. And from what I'm reading, nobody has really played this thing. I mean, hell, KJ Choi, the most famous South Korean golfer, said he's never played it because of the exclusivity of the club. So, I mean, Sung Kang said he played it once years ago, and they've made changes to almost all the holes since he's played it. So I think, given the conditions and everything, I think the 12 to 14 is where I'm leaning. But again, that it's tough to say that with a ton of confidence, because I could absolutely see somebody coming out here and just going absolutely nuts if the wind lays down at all one of these days.
Right. And it just takes one guy to really push it that low. You can have the average, the average golfer in the field sort of be around that 8 to 11, 12 range. But if somebody just catches fire and wins by 6, then you're talking about, being all the way down at 18, 19. So I guess we'll see. I think that there's some guys in the 9K range here that have a pretty decent shot at taking this thing down. So are there, I mean, let's just think about cash for a sec. I mean, I know me personally, I don't really differentiate too much between cash and GPP because golf is so sort of variant. But if you had to just be like in the 9K range, the guy that I definitely want to start a cash lineup around, what are you thinking there?
Patty Reed, baby. All the Patrick Reed this week. I know, listen, I don't know how popular he's going to be, but I've run a bunch of models on Fantasy National, and in what I'm considering important and the way I've weighted things, Patrick Reed keeps coming up. And then I sort of, so the reason I like Patrick Reed so much this week is I look back at what happened last week with Patrick Perez. So I'm going back-to-back Patricks here. But Patty Perez, played well down the stretch, played well into the playoffs last year, and then just comes out in his first event and really throttles the field in a course that's kind of fit for him. He tends to win on these coastal courses in smaller field type events, the Mayakoba, things like that. Well, then I translate that. If I just kind of take the same thinking over to this week, Patrick Reed had a really off year last year, just generally speaking, until it kind of came down to the stretch in the last, quarter of the year. And his strokes gained approach started to come around. He started to find his ball striking again. His driver started to not be wild off the tee. And he produced some great results in the playoffs. Takes his little break, which Patrick Reed doesn't take too many breaks. And this is his first event back after the President's Cup. And I think we have an informed Patrick Reed in a field of guys that are mediocre at best, and the top tier are not in their finest form. We don't have any clue where Day is. Finau is not on the same level as Patrick Reed, in my opinion. So I'm going to go heavy on Patrick Reed because I can't see myself saying that for 400 less that Keegan Bradley's a great play compared to Patrick Reed. I think that's just sort of insane to me. The other thing is we're going to bent grass greens. I think people are going to try and carry over results from last week. And while I agree with that to some degree, that rhymed, but the greens aren't going to be anything like the same, I don't believe. You had Paspalum greens on a slow course that's designed to be really, really scoreable. And that's what we saw last week is Patty Perez take advantage of that and making bomb after bomb after bomb. You look at the undulation throughout these greens, and there's some really, really funky greens on this golf course, like really long and skinny and like winding around, and some that have these like fingers that go out different directions and stuff. You're going to need to be a solid approach game, but you're not going to see guys making bomb putts, I don't think, to keep this, to like drag this score all the way down to like 19, 20 under. And I do believe you're going to have to be a good putter. Last week, we saw it heavily favor bad putters, a la Keegan Bradley up in the top. So I think you're going to – I actually like Keegan. I'm not a not Keegan guy. But I'll be honest, Keegan. I didn't play a bunch of him last week. I did have an outright on him. But I think there's going to be a large percentage of people that get trapped this week, putting too much emphasis on last week's results that I think were heavily favored by slow greens. And I don't believe you're going to see that this week. And that's why I like Patrick Reed. He's great around the greens if it gets windy. He's good in the wind. He's from Texas. And he's a phenomenal putter. So, again, you put Patrick Reed in a small field like this. He tends to perform better in small fields than he does in big tournaments. He knows where he stands, and he knows what it's going to take to get it done, kind of like match play. He can look his opponent in the eye, and he can crush them. So that's kind of what I expect Patrick Reed to do this week is just crush.
All right. That's fine. I mean, personally, I'm just going to spend the extra 300 and go up to Xander because he's my boy. So
go next.
I thought he played, he obviously played pretty well when he come in third last week. He sort of hit like a little bit of a snag. I guess it was the Dell. He didn't really play that well, but his drivers come back. His ball striking has come back quite a bit. And really, I mean, a shot to win necessarily. Because I don't think anybody could have really won, but I think he easily could have been self instead of in third last week if he just didn't, sort of I don't know what you want to say, like mope around the course on Sunday to a 72 and just sort of be like meh and like not really do much. So 65, 67, 67 before that. So I like him quite a bit. Like I'll always gravitate towards him. I think the price is fair. Just sort of given his form in the field that this is in. I am curious your thoughts on Leishman, because I feel like, I don't know, I'm looking at fan share now, and I guess people are talking about him, but it doesn't seem like people are, according to fan share, a bit, but not really like outright start tags, which I think I've seen is sort of been more of an indicator of ownership. So what are your thoughts on Leishman? Is there any interest there for you?
There is. So I have a pro and a con for Leishman, and I'll start with the con. The con is that when his driver's not there, he misses it pretty badly, kind of like Jason Day does. And we saw them paired up at the President's Cup. And when I first saw the pairing for the President's Cup, I thought, oh man, they're either going to play really, really good or they're going to play really, really bad, because both of them miss their driver big time because they both bomb it. That said, it's not a driver course. And Leishman is Australian, and he's a known great wind player. The second thing that I think works in his favor is one of the best comp courses I could come up with for this is Bay Hill. And he won at Bay Hill last year. So windy course, it's got quite a bit of water on it. You need to be strategic. And so, I mean, that's kind of my take on Leishman. It's a little tough to know where he's at, because Leishman is a guy that tends to play better after 2 or 3 weeks out on tour, and he kind of gets a groove going. And like that third or fourth week, fifth week is when he really shines. And we've kind of seen that if you look back. And okay, it's a bit subjective. It's just me following his trends. I don't have like math on it, but he does tend to play better 2 and 3 and 4 rounds in or weeks in than he does just the first week out. But this is absolutely an event. We saw a different Leishman last year. He was much more committed to his game, and it showed in his results throughout the year. So I could absolutely see him coming down and having a great week, especially in the wind. And when he gets his putter rolling, it gets really hot, and he can score. So even if this turns into a scoring fest and we're wrong about, how the difficulty of the course, I think he can certainly keep up. So I got nothing but love for Leishman. My only concern would be that, if they do have to hit driver and his driver's not on, he could get wild and you could end up with a bunch of balls in the trees. But generally speaking, I do like Leishman. I will have some exposure to him. And I think he's a bit sneaky because I think he goes overlooked.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I do have to throw out some Rafa love, just because I had him in one and done, and I've never done that before. Now I have, I got a nice little finish from him, a little top 10. So we might have to talk one and done after we wrap up the the DraftKings stuff, because I'm like super into it now. So
yeah, one and done, absolutely.
So as we keep going, I think it gets kind of interesting here. I think if you hit on the one guy in the 8K range, I think it'll pay off like pretty handsomely, because I think there's a lot of sort of similar range of outcomes in this range for the most part. So is there, I think I want to sort of get your thoughts about Adam Scott before I do anything else. I don't know I feel like everybody has a pretty guttural reaction to Adam Scott. Like, you either love him or you hate him. So what, just in general, like as a golfer. So what are your thoughts about Scott?
I like Adam Scott as a golfer, as a person, for the game in general. I think he's great. I think I think you're 100% right. Just generally speaking, people have a very visceral reaction to Adam Scott, whether it's positive or negative. Every time I see him on the green, I like cringe because he has a putter in his hand, and it's like he might be the worst putter on tour if Lucas Glover wasn't playing on tour. So
I think Hideki wants to throw his hat into that ring too. But
that's fair. That's fair. Okay, that's fair. Hideki's pretty bad with that duck stance, man. He's got like the pigeon toe duck thing happening. I don't get that. But anyway.
And he owns like 7 putters that he brings to every practice round. Like, it's wild. I've never seen a guy
in a golf tournament doing that. How could you? It's like bringing 9 drivers and saying, you know what, one of them's going to work this week. It is. It's like, I don't get that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
all right.
I like Adam Scott, and I think that it's tough this week because he's going to play well in the wind. He's an incredible ball striker, and ball striking is at a premium when you're playing in the wind. And I think that is maybe the most important reason that you should play Adam Scott this week. But he has to putt the ball. So that's the reason you shouldn't play Adam Scott this week. I actually will have some light exposure to Adam Scott for 2 reasons. One, because if he won and I wasn't on him, that would be just awful. And 2, people are forgetting about the nappy factor. So Adam Scott had a kid right down the stretch of the the playoffs last year, and kind of fizzled out, which we all kind of expected. But this is his first tournament back after having the baby. Kind of new season. He did play a tournament after having the baby, and blah blah blah. But there could be some residual nappy factor if you're into the narrative thing, for Adam Scott. But ultimately, I think totally fading Adam Scott's probably a mistake. You should have exposure, whether it be an outright bet, whether it be 1 or 2 lineups or something. But when you look at his odds for the Masters and you look at his odds for this tournament, they're the same. That's ridiculous.
Right.
There's a huge discount to be had on Adam Scott this week. So if you're a believer in just talent, forget form, but if you're a believer in just talent, he is the most talented golfer in this field, then you're getting him at a huge discount. So I think it's hard to look past that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm on board with that. You talked me into it. So another guy I wanted to talk about is Sung Kang. You mentioned him earlier. He came 3rd last week. He was 69 or 68. Like he was
free.
Yeah, he was completely free last week. Priced up a little bit this week at 8,200, but I think that's appropriate. Like, I think this is closer to what his price should be than what last week was, in my opinion. So, you are getting him after a price jump, which is always, buy low and whatever else. But I do think that he makes some sense this week. And then, Gary Goat, we got Woodland, so obviously just fire him up. Just 100% exposure every week. So we're good then. That's it in this range. I forgot Gary was here. So we're good for the 8K range, right? That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's it, but I do. So I like Gary Woodland more this week than I did last week, actually. Mainly because I think it's another less than driver course, and Gary tends to excel on the less than driver courses. Which is sort of interesting for a guy that can bomb at like 320 yards.
Right.
But you look at his results across those courses, and it's pretty self-evident. But I don't like chalk bad golfers, and Gary Woodland. I shouldn't say bad golfers. I don't mind chalk if it's a golfer that can win, but I don't like chalk when they're golfers that aren't going to be winning, or that I don't think they have a legitimate chance to win. And I didn't see Gary as one of those guys last week. This week, he's not chalk, and I think he still has the same chance. He has the same odds to win, in my opinion. Now, maybe not by the books or anything else, but I think he has the same win equity here at this course than he did last week, and you're getting him at a discount in terms of ownership. And I think that's the time you jump on a guy like Gary Woodland. So I like Gary for that reason. Sung Kang is a bit interesting to me. He's not been known as the most consistent golfer in the world, so it scares me a little bit going to a home game on his home course, his home island. He was born on Jeju Island. Right. I don't know what kind of pressure that is. All I think about when I think about golfers going to like a home course venue is Webb Simpson 2 years ago and just crushing everyone's souls. So I kind of have a thing about not rostering golfers that are playing their home events. That might bite me, but Sung Kang for a no-cut event, he scores prolifically, and we saw last week what he can do, and it's tough to overlook him. I think he might be better as an outright since he's going to be really heavily owned in DraftKings. If you don't believe the hype, you can hedge your bets with an outright or something like that and fade him here. But ultimately, I think that I personally won't have tons of exposure to him, but I wouldn't fault anybody for going 100% ownership, really. But I do think that the benefits of the 8K range probably lie outside of those two golfers. And the two that I'm going to go with are JB Holmes and Brendan Grace. JB, so interesting note about this golf course. It's a lot more Scottish than it is Asian. Right. Just in general, they've got the revetted bunkers, things like that. And we're going to have windy conditions, kind of like they have in Scotland frequently. JB Holmes has played well over in Scotland at the Aberdeen Asset Scottish Open. He's won. I'm not sure he's won that. He played well in that event one year, and then he finished third 2 years ago behind Mickelson and Stenson at the British Open with really windy, hellish conditions. And then you get to Brendan Grace, not a long course. You take driver out of his hand, and Brendan Grace is a different golfer. He's got a little bit of form going, plays really well in the wind, as almost all South Africans do. And when he gets his putter hot, he's walking in 15-footers. So I think for just trading off the ownership and going heavy on those two guys in GPPs might be the direction this week, because I do believe that both of those golfers have what it takes to put a top 10 together at this course.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and when you look at a guy like Grace, I don't know, a guy who's sort of like criminally underrated, I feel a lot of times, like people just don't want to own him for whatever reason. And I feel like you mentioned, when he puts it together, he really puts it together. So I'm good with that. I do have to, I don't know. I did want your opinion also on Daniel Berger. If Evan was here, he would say Berger. So shout out Ev. Mispronunciation, just keeping the brand alive. But it could just be yes or no. Any interest in Berger this week?
Yes.
That seems like a no.
It's yes, because it's Daniel Berger, but we're not playing the FedEx St. Jude Classic, so I'm not sure that he has the win equity he needs. It's tough. I don't think Berger's game is there, and Berger's one of those guys. He's either first or he's last, because he goes into total DGAF mode. I'm not for me this week. That might bite me in the ass, but that's fine. We skipped over Schneider Jans. I actually really like Ali this week.
Okay. I was just going to say about Berger too. I feel like he, in his range of outcomes, he has like a Grayson Murray from last week where he just finishes like DFL, but it doesn't matter because he's all over the place and just birdieing everything or double bogeying every other hole. I think that he has some, maybe if he was like 8,100 or like 7,900, I would feel like a hell of a lot better about him. But I do think
that's a fair point.
He has some upside for just DK scoring purposes.
That's a fair point. I can get on board with that.
So speaking of Grayson, we can shoot down under 8K, and we can start with him. I think it was Tour Junkies that tweeted it out. He was like, what did he end up, 69th last week or 68th? And he scored more DK points than like almost everybody in the 30s, like that finished. Like he didn't even get bonus points for his finishing position, and he still managed to outscore a lot of guys. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Are you going back to the Murray well this week or no?
I didn't play him last week, and I probably won't play him this week. I'm not opposed to Grayson Murray in general, but it's tough for me to get behind a guy that finished damn near dead last but scored well, because it could just go really wrong this week. On a different golf course, windier conditions. I don't believe it's going to play nearly as easy. I don't believe the scoring is going to be as prolific as it was last week, and that takes away the advantage that Murray had last week. So that's what leads me to kind of be off of him. Then again, but that said, he's a talented golfer and a tour winner. He could absolutely, put a top 10 together here, and not for me this week. Somebody else can take him.
Yeah, if you saw any of that 82 on Thursday, like you,
dude, I've put together better rounds of golf than that guy did on Thursday. Okay,
it was unbelievable. I was like, I just couldn't believe that. For him to do poorly is one thing, but like 82 is like, oof,
it's impressively bad.
Yeah, especially on that course. You know,
It's
it's not like,
Keegan-esque.
oh god, yeah, true. Um, outside of that, in this like upper 7K range, I mean, we got Ches, we got your boy Glover, we got Harmon, Schwartzel, List, Peters, Kirk, Dillette. We got all these guys over 7,500. Vegas, Lovemark, Poulter, all those guys are above 7,500. So, is there anybody really jumping out to you here?
Yeah, actually. Well, first, I'm going to give a piece of advice to anybody that's considering playing Keegan Bradley this week. Just play Luke List for the discount. They're the same golfer statistically.
Yeah,
They
100%.
and Luke List probably scores better anyway. So if you're considering Keegan, just don't and play Luke List.
Never keep.
I actually like Keegan. I just can't get behind him this week. So there's a couple of guys that I really do like. I think Sink is going to be really popular after his just, mind-blowing Friday and Saturday scores. But I'm not sure I'm going to get back on him. I think I might go one notch up to Ian Poulter. And I think it goes to a little bit of the wind and design layout of the course. Since, it is a bit Scottish, things are kind of laid out that way, and they're going to have some really windy conditions. I think the premium will be on ball striking, and we've seen how just resurgent Ian Poulter's been in his ball striking over the last 6 months. And it's part of an ownership play. I just don't think he's going to be popular, and I think he has upside on a course that doesn't demand any kind of length, and that's really where guys like Ian Poulter can show up. I mean, it's sort of the same thing as like the RCB, Heritage over here. You don't need length at all. You just need to keep it in the fairway, and you need to be able to attack pins and be close to the pin. And I think that is, probably the most important thing about Ian Poulter's game that I like right now.
Yeah, that works for me. I mean, I'm just trying to put together a lineup of like the most hated guys, and like 3 of them are in this range, right? Like you got Murray, you got Dillette, and you got Poulter right in this range. It's like you could just put together like the dicks of DFS and just really actually have some decent value here. But
what a great Twitter handle, DFS dicks.
And then I mean we mentioned List briefly. I'm fully on board with him. He's going to be chalk again, obviously, every time he's at this price. But in a no-cut event, I think that he's exactly what you want in this kind of tournament. I do think, I don't know. I mean, I really want to like Peters, but he's just making it so goddamn hard where it's like he's all over the place. Like I can't pin him down. I don't know.
Peters cost me a GPP last week.
Yeah.
I was going into Sunday, I was leading the FanDuel $4 GPP. And I had Peters and Hadwin, and they absolutely just crushed me on Saturday and Sunday, just in general. I don't know what it is with Peters. The dude is so talented. I expected him to score kind of, big last week, really, just because it's such an easy course.
Right.
I find it really difficult to get back on board with him this week after just watching him just throw away, an opportunity to win. I mean, he was in contention after Friday.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't watch a ton of the tournament because it's in the middle of the night, and I'm not a vampire, but
duly noted.
Yeah.
DFS Jimmy, not a vampire.
So check that box. So I don't know what it was with this game, if it was ball striking or if it was his putter, but based on knowing Thomas Peters, I'd have to say it's his putter, and I don't expect that to get any better on a course that I expect to be more difficult to putt on. Right. Faster greens with more undulation. So, and wind, we saw how frustrated he got in the wind 2 years ago at the British Open. He snapped a club and threw it into the gorse. I don't think I can get back on Thomas Peters this week.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, outside of that, in this upper 7K range, I always throw a dart at Vegas because you never know when you're gonna hit him on the right week. No cut event, right? I mean, what could go wrong?
Well, you got 4 par 5s though, and anytime you have 4 par 5s on a less than driver course, we know how just how low he can go. And I mean, if he goes low for 2 of those rounds, you're printing money.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, outside of that, I think there's a couple more guys in the 7K range. It's really gross. Like it's horrifically gross, but I don't know. You tell me one that you like, and then we're in the trust tree, so I'm gonna tell you one guy that I like after you tell me somebody that you like in this range, because I need to muster up the courage to mention this guy's name. So you go first. Give me one in the lower 7K range that you're looking at.
All right. So in the lower 7K range, this is kind of gross because you just can't get it done. But I seem to think this might be a bounce back spot for Grillo a little bit, which is I feel really, I don't feel confident in it at all, but it is bent grass greens. And that's what kind of gives me the nudge to like stick him in a lineup is bent grass greens. He puts significantly better on bent grass. The other one is Wee Kim. So, and I had a bunch of him last week, and I'm going to go back to Wee Kim this week, just mainly for his scoring. The guy just sticks it close to the pin and knows how to score. I don't expect him to win or even top 10, but I think he could pull a Grayson Murray from last week and score better than the people around him.
All right. Gross.
Hit me. Hit me.
Those are not as gross as what I put him in my article this week. I put Morgan Hoffman in my article this week.
Nice.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's the worst. But I was looking through, and over his last 24 rounds, he's 7th in Eagles gained and 32nd average, right, for birdies or better gained. But I mean, he's reasonably good at avoiding bogeys, and I think that I think he fits this course a little bit. And for somebody who's going to, I mean, you put him in one lineup, and your guy. So
finished 23rd last week. How about that? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're getting them at a real low price, and now, so just a thought.
You know what? It's not as gross. It's not as gross as you think. I think it might be sneakier than it is gross.
Well, I hope so, because most of the time where I'm on there's been multiple times this year where I'm the only person that tagged somebody on FanShare, and hasn't turned out too well for me. Not gonna lie. Most of the time, there's been a reason that nobody else has been on them. Wisdom of the crowd and all that stuff. But
okay. What are your thoughts on Bud Colley?
I mean, yeah.
We're back on bent grass now.
I mean, yeah, that's true. It was ugly last week, so that's like just sort of soured me on him. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if that's going to be the thing this week, and we can sort of point to that and be like, yeah, that I think that's a reasonable. I was gonna say, I'm such a fucking idiot. I'm so tired. I can't even a reasonable reason to be on him. And I mean, he can score. He's great tee to green. He's been okay recently putting. So yeah, I'm good with that. I was sort of just when I was looking before, but I think that makes a little bit of sense.
What if I told you that him and Justin Thomas are going to go like Halloweening in a couple costumes? Does that help your cause at all?
Say that. I was going to say the only thing I really saw about Bud Colley this week was that Justin Thomas was looking for freaking Halloween costume ideas. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if he's going to be that close to greatness, that maybe some of JT's scoring will rub off on him.
Yeah, maybe they'll be the final pairing on Sunday. Who knows?
Oh my God, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Well,
maybe they'll dress up
both in a lineup.
And then the other guy I wanted to mention, just because he really, really screwed the pooch for me last week, was Hudson Swafford. I was on him for just sort of a lowish owned sort of GPP play, and he really like tanked one of my lineups. So I was a little disappointed in him, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew I have for him after last week.
I've heard several folks on him this week. I don't really know. I'm sort of a never Swafford guy. I don't think I've ever rostered him.
That's terrible.
Well, I don't play
You're
cash.
A Keegan guy and not a Swafford guy? Come on.
Well, I don't play cash for one. And I mean, Hudson's a great cash play. I mean, there's no denying it. But in tournaments, I just never see the upside in him. And that might be the reason that I don't roster him very often, because he's won all of one tournament.
So. That's reasonable. I'm okay with that. Yeah. I mean, really, since he won the career builder, it was like, what the hell happened to you, dude? He went on such a bad streak after that. And then he just like sort of pop up randomly and then, miss 4 more cuts in a row. It was really tough. I was hoping that he would put together a decent season after that win, but it didn't really happen last year.
It happens.
But so outside of that, some of these guys, like, I've never even heard of. What are there? I think there's like 5 Lees.
I was just going to say the same thing.
I'm like, I don't know any of these freaking guys, man. I'm like, it's, I'll throw a dart at Kevin Toy because I always do, just because.
This could be a spot for Toy.
Yeah. I put him in the article this week. I think he makes some sense again. I'm really, before I talked to you, I was really thinking that this was going to be more of a birdie fest. So, he's shown some upside just scoring, carding eagles rather, over his past few rounds. So that's something that I was sort of targeting originally, and now I'm sort of rethinking that. But I guess we'll see on that front. But any interest in like HV3 or anybody else down here?
I don't ever get HV3 right. I like the kid. I do. I think that he is going to win a PGA Tour event. I really thought that it was going to be last year in the swing season after his win in Australia. That didn't pan out, but I still like his talent long term. But he's an awful fucking putter, man. He's just not good at putting. He's not. And I don't know. Even my dog doesn't even like him.
Well, you know what? Actually, let me get you on him a little bit. What if I told you he was 15th in the field in strokes gained putting over the last 12 with ShotLink?
Now he's going to be in a lineup. Thanks a lot.
Maybe. I don't know. Just saying.
No, again, I like him. I truly think that he's going to win on tour, and I like long term. I believe in him. I don't know when it's going to be, and I find it hard to roster him. It's like trying to pick that week, but. That said, this could be that week because the event he won last year was an event kind of like this. It was, Australia, a bit obscure. You had like this marginal field out there, and it was windy conditions. And if we don't think the bent grass is going to putt like bent over here in America, it could be slower than we're anticipating. Again, everything we're doing is speculating on the greens and the course and everything else. So, let's say that the greens do play a little more like last week, and let's say they do play a little slower than regular bent grass. I mean, I can absolutely see a world in which HV3 takes driver out of his hand, smokes a bunch of irons off the tee, and his approach game, shows up this week, and he drains some putts. And he finds himself in a top 5, top 10 situation. I can't argue with that. I can see it. It's just, I don't know if I'm going to play it.
And I think just from like an ownership perspective, he's at the same price as Kyle Stanley, who's being talked up quite a bit. So you're going to get him at nothing. Just throwing him in one lineup out of, whatever you make 10, 20 lineups, you'll be overweight on him. So it's interesting. If he puts it together, he could definitely score on a course like this, I think.
Yeah, the fact that he's putted better than I thought, because I'll be honest, I didn't dig into HV3's putting stats at all. I just sort of expected that they were normal. But the fact that he's been putting better over the last 12 rounds, 12 weeks, does sort of pique my interest a little bit, because ultimately I do believe in the long-term talent of HV3. So might have talked me into him in a couple.
Yeah, I mean, last week they didn't have there's no real strokes gain data from last week, but 3 of the last 5 times he's played, he's been gaining strokes putting, which is it's a pretty big deal for him because sometimes he can, lose 4 or 5 strokes on the greens.
Adam Scott,
So just something to think about. Is there anybody else worth talking about for you, or?
Oh my God, are you kidding me? There's a ton of people down here at the bottom of this range that nobody's mentioning.
Yeah. All right. Hit me with it.
Well, first of all, you've got Graham McDowell, who is a bit resurgent. And if we think it's going to be somewhat Scottish-like, not a long course and tons of wind, that just screams Graham McDowell to me. I don't think he can win, but a top 10, I think, is in his range of outcomes. You've got the world beater in Young Hung Song, who 2 years ago bested Jordan Spieth basically heads up down the stretch and held off Jordan Spieth in a Chinese or Japanese event. I can't remember the tour they were on, but he's shown that he has the talent to compete against world-class players when he's on. And we're in his region of the world. He'll be marginally popular. I've heard some people talking him up, but you could do worse than him. Kelly Craft actually jumped out to me when I was looking at approach numbers on Fantasy National this week. He might be in one lineup, but his approach numbers kind of jumped out to me as being way better than I expected them to be on the course type. So if you're looking for nobody will own him, you're talking like 1% ownership on Kelly Craft.
Yeah, Craft has. I just looked at it. That's what you just heard right now, folks, is the first tag on on Kelly Craft. So you're definitely going to get him at low ownership. But I agree with that. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those events where what you think is going to happen is not going to happen. I think it's just generally speaking a good way to approach building your lineups. If you fully and wholeheartedly believe that outcome A is going to happen, just go ahead and plan on outcome B occurring. I think we as a golf society or golf community probably are overthinking this event, just in general, and. I think we're probably going to have 5 guys that nobody thought about inside the top 20, which will be what, quarter, fifth, 20%. So
yeah, exactly.
The other guy this one, I've heard one other person on him, and it kind of jumps out to me in the model that I built a really specific model on Fantasy National, and it only accounted for one golf course last year, which was Silverado, but it was a par 72, blah, blah, blah. It fit all the things. And Cody Gribble shows up as number 1 in there. Guy has no form, but it's a no-cut event, and he has shown that he can score. I'm not huge on it, but he'll probably make his way into one lineup for me. And then the last one is Sang Moon Bae. I mean, I haven't heard anybody on him. The guy's been gone in the military, but this is his home country, and he was the most talented Korean golfer we've seen ever on tour. And he's making it. I think it's his 2nd or 3rd event back. I think it's kind of crazy that nobody's talked about him. I don't even know what his fan share tags are. Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, he's only at 2 right now. So
I think that's a little bit ridiculous given that it's his home country and that he was as talented as he was when he had to go away to the military.
And he's free. I mean, 6,900, like he's costing you nothing.
Yeah. Again, I don't think you should go all in on Sang Moon Bae, but I do think that you should probably have some exposure if you're doing multiple lineups. If you're doing 5 lineups, you should probably be in one of them. Especially if you're trying to stack up guys at the top or something like that. I think he's a good punt play.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So other than that, there's Young Min Lee and some of these other guys. I don't have any clue who they are, and who the hell knows? You can play them if you want, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a few. I mean, you look on Fantasy National and it's a few just black lines across with no data. So I'm not. I mean, if you are going all out and making 50 lineups and you have the balls to do that, Godspeed this week. But I'm not one of those guys.
First of all, I don't think anybody should be making 50 lineups on this slate. Have you seen the GPP prize pools? They are not good.
Yeah, it's ugly.
So, use bankroll management this week, folks. Don't go crazy.
Yeah,
just put a few lineups in that you feel good about. Have a good time. Watch the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. And then just, play all the Giants in NFL DFS on Sunday and you'll be fine. So it's fine. We got the Eli Ingram stack is rocking this week. So
it is lit.
God, it's terrible being a fucking Giants fan. I hate it so much. Like, I've never been so disappointed for a win. I was just like, just be bad. Like, I just don't even give me like a glimmer of hope. Just be bad. And
Did you think they were going to lose at halftime? Did you think at halftime it was all going to go bad and ultimately they were going to end up losing?
I was telling my friends the whole day that we were watching, I was like, we kept talking about it, and I was like, they're gonna lose by at least 20 points. Like, that was fully in my head. Like, there was no way this was ever going to be a close game. And then I didn't even let myself get excited about it, because I was just like, they're going to screw it up somehow anyway. Like, what does it matter? And then they actually, they looked all right. So I guess we'll see. Yeah, but I mean, I think that just about does it for us. Thanks again for coming on, Jimmy.
Absolutely.
We, again, just make sure that you are heading over to the site to check out the content that I'm putting up. I'm building a few more models and getting that up on the site tonight. The preview article is up. The pivot article will hopefully be up unless some catastrophe happens at my school tomorrow and I have a couple of free minutes here and there. So, yeah, good luck to everybody this week. Make sure you're heading over to iTunes, subscribe there, subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff, just like usual. So thanks again for listening, and good luck this weekend. See you.